Hey guys, Magpie here, and today you're birdwatching with Magpie. So, little game we're looking at here called Mordhau. You may not have heard of it, just recently hit Kickstarter, a couple of videos up there we'll put up here so you can see. So if you've heard of Chivalry, Medieval Warfare, pretty similar, it's in that vein. It's the modern medieval slasher kind of game. So basically you have 6v6, and I think they're going up to 30v30 maybe. Of people that, you're running with swords and axes and hammers, go whacking and hitting the crap out of each other. Now, the cool thing about this game is that, so Civ was kind of the first steps into this genre, or perhaps more recently, a refinement of it. So, what this game does a bit different than Civ is that while Civ was trying to really nail the accuracy, like for instance your blade, rather than just like you click and it's a hit scan hit in this area, it would actually trace where the blade, the path of the blade went. So it was extremely accurate, but you did end up with a bunch of really weird behavior. Like for instance, people would do an overhand strike, which starts behind you and slashes all the way down. Well, what people would do is that, for instance, they'd start one of the strikes and then flip around to 180. So rather than hitting you with a downstroke on the sword, they were hitting you with the upstroke of the sword. Or, they might send their sensitivity to something insane and then do a horizontal slash, but then just start spinning in circles with the sensitivity really high, so you'd end up with this little dude doing a whirlwind, And, for what it was really good. And it did have those little quirks, which some people, it's like K-style is the way I see, in that, for instance, there's the way the game was intended to be played and the way that it can be played. Now, the way that it can be played can utilize perhaps some unintended consequences in the mechanics of the system. You're not strictly exploiting something, but you are utilizing it beyond how it was originally envisioned. And that's what ended up happening a lot with Civ. So in this game, they're not going for like a full-on simulation. They are trying to get a little closer to that, a little bit more realistic. They don't want you spinning around like a top, going all crazy. So it's like whenever you swing, your movement is actually slowed down a little bit. I think your turning is always capped to a certain degree while you're swinging. Likewise, they want to make it so overhead strokes, backstrokes, those sort of things are going to be within reason. Now, one of the big things that they're doing in there is the parry system. Is that so? There's some games, I'm not sure if Civ quite did this, but it was basically you would have to, if you're just facing the direction of the guy that's attacking you and you parry, you'll instantly block it because you're facing the guy, he's attacking you. That's all that it figures in. But what they're actually doing here is that you have to parry the point of the blade, so you can still end up there's a number of techniques. Like one of them is chambering, where basically your strike, somebody swings at you. You swing or stab basically in the same direction they are in a way that deflects their strike and ends up hitting them. So sort of as double whammy, obviously very difficult to do, and that's still in the game though. That's one of the cool things, that this is still in the game, is chambering and a few of these other techniques. So ultimately, they do want to preserve a lot of the higher skill elements in the game, but they want to make sure that it's all intuitive. It makes sense. The first thing you figure when you're playing the game is not, if I set my sensitivity to this ridiculous number and I swing and I start spinning around, and that, and then everybody, Beyblade, the entire game becomes like this little thing of Beyblade. So, that's not. They want it to look cool. Like, it's not going to be a simulation, but it's going to look really cool. You're going to have these battles going back and forth where it's like every hit, every parry, every blow makes the next strike faster or the next parry harder. But then they also have elements of the system where they're going to have things like, for instance, I'm not sure they had this in Civ, but you have stamina. So I think you can always block or you can always swing. But your stamina will prevent you. So for instance, if you have 0 stamina and you block one more strike, your weapon actually gets knocked out of your hand, which is another big part of the system. I'll get into that later. So some weapons will do more stamina damage, and some weapons will do less stamina damage. So if somebody's wailing on you with a hammer, the other games, the issue is that, like, somebody with a little tiny, teeny dagger can block, like in Mountain Blade Warband. Somebody with this itty-bitty dagger can block a warhammer, and they can just do it over and over and over, and there's no downside to them. Whereas on the other hand, in this game, it's like if you block a warhammer, then your stamina is going to be fucked. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the other dude can block you all day long. It doesn't matter. It's hardly going to take him any stamina to do that. So there's not only the system with the weapons, which, by the way, there's going to be a whole assortment of weapons. I think they're going to have a couple different categories like swords, axes, hammers, and halberds. And then there's going to be bows. There's going to be crossbows, which we've yet to see a lot on that, but they are trying to strike a good balance with them. And then there's going to be different sets of armor. So there's going to be light, medium, heavy armor, and I think 3 different zones you could put it on. And then how you're armored in those zones also determines how you're protected in those zones. So obviously, if you're not wearing a helmet and you get shot in the face with an arrow, you are going to die. So it's going to be interesting because not only do you have the weapons and then you have the armor, but there's going to be perks of a sort. So I think the way it's going to work is that basically within your particular builds, because it's like you have, build A, build B, build C, you're going to have a finite amount of points to allocate to certain talents, so to speak. So, for instance, heavy armor is 60 points. The heavy bow is 50 points. But in that, they prevent the idea of, like, somebody running around with plate mail and using a bow, because the bow costs 60 points. So if you're spending those 60 points, you can't afford the heavy armor. It's something to that extent. So you're going to have to kind of mix and match and figure out what works best on your builds, but it's going to be there. It's going to be it's going to be a bit easier to balance things because of that. But there's going to be a lot of thought and customization that goes into the builds. Also on your weapons, it's not just picking a category, but you can also pick little elements on the weapons, possibly counterweights or materials, and some are strictly cosmetic, some actually do something. But overall, the combat looks really good, the customization looks really good, the perk system sounds really good, a really good way to potentially balance loadouts in certain builds so you don't have, the tank healer, damage dealer kind of deal. There's no healing in the game, by the way, that I know of. But, yeah, so you don't have a guy running around a Teutonic plate with a longbow, just 180 sniping kills, or whatever. So another big thing, like I mentioned, a weapon gets knocked out of your hand. They are actually going to have, in this game, the ability to pick up weapons, or even throw them. So they're actually going to have some cool elements where, well, like I said earlier, you might not have the heavy armor dude with a bow. Well, you might have a map that's like a siege map. So your defending team actually has the ability to run to these weapon racks and just pull weapons from the racks. So you might have some circumstances where they have some useful elements like that. I think another thing they had was rocks, so you can chuck rocks down murder holes. But yeah, so ultimately it's pretty cool because not only, like I said, can you end up knocking people's weapons out of their hands, but you can throw your weapons, and you can pick up weapons. And you can even pick up an enemy's weapon. So you kill some dude. This dude's weapon is OP. You kill this dude, and you can take his weapon. You can run around and use that weapon. So it's interesting. We'll have to see how it's balanced and how it works out. But ultimately, it kind of looks like a bit more of an intuitive, possibly better designed chivalry. At a glance. We'll see how it turns out, how it pans out. Ultimately, it's a game I definitely would keep an eye on. It did pass the Kickstarter, so it is funded. It is being developed. There are some videos out there that I'm hoping are running here behind me. But yeah, overall, looks like a pretty sweet game. Good addition to the genre. And, well, here's hoping to see it soon. Thank you for watching. This has been Totally Legit Science, Magpie. Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe to see more of our videos. Leave a comment. Let us know what you want to see. Take it easy.